What if it were possible for you to invest in the best global real estate like the top 1% can? Stay tuned to hear more. Welcome to Business Without Barriers, the show bringing you relevant strategies to thrive and succeed in a volatile world, and the show turning barriers into bridges by bringing humanity back to business. I'm your host, Carmen Wild, and opening up his success vault for us today is Scott Picken. Scott is the chairman of the Global Wealth Group, founder and CEO of Wealth Migrate, published author, wealth movement pioneer, and serial fintech entrepreneur. Scott is a disruptor with a mighty mission to create the technology to give 99% of the world the ability to invest in the best global real estate like the top 1% can. Started in 2010, Wealth Migrate is the leading global real estate marketplace built on blockchain, enabling investors to safely invest from as little as $1,000 per investment on a cell phone. Their vision is to make investing as simple as a swipe of the finger from as little as $1. Scott and his partners together have facilitated over 10,800 investments on 5 continents to a value of over $1.4 billion. Scott's passion for collaborative smart investing has led him to being one of the first to realize its potential to revolutionize real estate forever and create global wealth for all. He believes his purpose is to solve the wealth gap. Scott, such a warm welcome to you. Awesome to have you on the show.
Thanks for to that, realizing there's a lot of pressure out there to actually fulfill that mission and that purpose, but something I'm very passionate about, and very glad to be here and to share with your listeners.
Fantastic. So before we begin, Scott, I want to read your Wealth Movement Manifesto to give our audience a glimpse of your disruptive thinking. Are you cool with that?
No, please do.
All righty. Imagine a world where most or all people are literate. A world where education is par for the course. A world where women are treated as equals. A world where all people have access to investment opportunities. In this world, children will grow up in a family and be raised in a home their parents own. Because of this, they'll be healthier and have access to healthcare facilities and caregivers. They'll live in less stressful environments with less conflict in their homes. Imagine a world where 6 billion people on the planet who currently live in poverty can live a better life. Even if we can only help 1 billion in the next 5 years, imagine that world. Wealth Movement aims to create that world. Scott, what goes through your mind and how do you feel when you hear that?
What goes through my mind is 2 things. The first one is that growing up in Africa, people talk about the wealth gap and they talk about income inequality, and you go to London and you go to America and they talk about the wealth gap, and it's because someone can't get access to digital TV or something, and they've just got no idea of what poverty actually is. And growing up in Africa, you really do. What I think is really interesting is that most of the people who are listening to this recording and quite frankly, everyone, it doesn't fall into that category because they've already got access to the internet, they've got a laptop, they're watching it. And so what's interesting is that they immediately dial out and they say to themselves, well, that's not for me, shame for them. But unfortunately, I want to give them a bit of a reality check, and that's that statistically in England, Australia, and America, if you look at the age of 65, statistically, 94% of people will either be dead broke or reliant on the government by the time they're 65. And I'm talking England, Australia, and America. So this is not Mauritius, South Africa, India, and China. 5% will be financially independent, which again, if we were in a live room, I would ask people to put up their hands and everyone will raise their hands and they say, wonderful, I want to be financially independent. Until I ask them the definition of financially independent according to the financial industry. And what it basically means is that you earn 25% less on the last day of your last paycheck. Now, I don't know about you, Carmen, but I look at that and I just go, you 20%. So actually, every single one of us that's watching this recording is working your absolute using it. I want to say arse. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but you basically
Yes.
are using all the energy in the world to win. And statistically, less than 1% of you are going to win. And so rather than sitting here and worrying about someone that's living, I tend to say a rickshaw driver in India, a rice paddy farmer in China, and or even someone living in a shack in Africa. This is not only about them. That's why we talk about the 99%. This is all of us. Every single middle class person, professional, entrepreneur, unless you've already invested billions or millions of dollars and are a global citizen, then unfortunately you join probably me and Carl in the category of this is for us. And so when you say what goes through my head is both, I said to you, there's two things. One is, yes, I think we need to change the world. And ultimately, I want to get it down to $1 per person per investment, because there's 3.5 billion people on the planet that live on less than $2 a day. And I don't think we can solve any of the challenges on the planet unless we solve the biggest challenge, which is the wealth gap and income inequality. But equally, I came from a family where my father did everything he was taught to do. He went to school, he worked hard, he went to university, got a great job, he became an accountant, he became financial director of a listed company. What else are you supposed to do? He put me through private schooling, et cetera, et cetera. And yet he trusted the financial industry, paid his taxes, and when he died broke. So, I looked at that at a very young age and going, I'm sorry, this formula is broken, and I'm not kind of copying the same strategy. And really what I'm deeply passionate about is sharing with people not only why the system's broken, but more importantly, how they can avoid it.
Awesome introduction. Thank you. And I like that you put that in context as to how you got to the 99%, and not one of us are actually spared of this. And given the changing conditions that we're seeing daily, I think that's even more grave danger if we don't think differently. So before we get into your model and the thinking more specifically around what you're doing, I want to take a step back, because you were a budding property mogul at the age of 13 already. Tell us about this first real estate project. What did that entail?
Well, look, that one's a little bit more of fun. I was sharing a bedroom with my brother, and I decided that I didn't like sharing a bedroom with my brother. So I persuaded my parents that we could knock through the toilet and build a double bedroom ensuite bathroom. And I think really credit to my parents. I'm sure that we had a quantity surveyor and an architect and a bunch of important people, but I sort of believed that was my first project. And so it was really my first construction project. And got going. The love for building's always been there. I mean, even when I was 6, 7, or 8, everyone else was all fishing and I was building dams. So, but truthfully though, I did actually do my first development when I was at university when we were 19. And I did my first, that wasn't a proper development either. We converted a triple garage into 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. And we failed to do one quite important little thing, which is get planning permission. And so we had to take it all down. And I tend to joke with people, I did my first proper property development when I was 22. We bought a house in Cape Town and converted it into 6 townhouses.
So great to hear stories where people actually started when they were young and kind of already knew what was their passion. That's very cool when you get it so young. What would you regard? You've had so many amazing successes. What would you regard as your most treasured success, and why?
Sure. Great question. So one of them is being a good dad. Brings tears to my eyes. I think that's really important. And I think to be there, and I mean, the little man is 8. So I take that very seriously. I think probably one of the things that I love most is that, one of my MTPs, which is a massive transformative purpose, I've got 3 of them. I'm happy to share all 3, but one of them is to inspire people to achieve the impossible. And nothing I enjoy more is when I meet people that didn't think it was possible and now believe it's possible, because once you've got belief, anything's possible. So whether it's stories where you hear they changed their belief, or even better, when they changed their belief and took action. And I hear stories all the time of how people have immigrated to go live in another country, or their child's been able to go to university overseas, or they bought a house and that was their first property they bought. And I'm sure you've heard the theory of the starfish, where there's thousands of starfish on the beach and the old man's picking up one starfish at a time and throwing them in the sea. And the young boy says, why is that important? And the old man picks up a starfish and throws it in the sea and says it's important for that one. And really, when you talk about empowering 1 billion people, or sorry, Carmen, I talk about empowering 1 billion people, it's not about 1 billion people at a time, it's one person at a time. And so each and every story to me is special. And honestly, I wish we could reach more people is the honest truth, So I think that's really a huge achievement, and I hope that we can empower more people and inspire more people, and hopefully everyone watching this call by the end of it will feel inspired to try and achieve the impossible, because I think we as a team have stood testament to what's possible.
Scott, this is what I absolutely love about you. You are a disruptor. You've got a disruptor mindset. You're in a flippin' tough industry. Along the way, there's been some barriers, and I'm sure you'll mention some of them later on. But there's also this amazing heart. You're all about heart, about giving, about generosity. And if you want to take off that jersey, you're the beautiful combination of both unfuckwithable, yet amazing heart. And I don't think there can be two more amazing qualities in a leader disrupting industry. So thank you for sharing that with us. So given that shirt, what do you think has shaped that part of you, that disruptor, take on mission impossible part of you? What's the driving force behind it?
That's a tough question to answer. So I think my parents deserve a lot of credit. My dad, it always amazes me when I hear stories of people whose parents, put them down. I don't understand it. My dad kind of gave me things like, you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. Dream big, my son. People become what they dream. So, I think we were never held back, my brother and I. And on the one hand, my dad was giving us all that positive thing, and mom was pushing us pretty hard as well. So you're going to meet two extremely motivated brothers. And probably if there's a downside, we work hard and try too hard. But I think the second thing is, growing up in Africa is quite an important thing. I lived in London for 9 years. I'm allowed to have an opinion of the first world. I've traveled all over the world. And, I think people in the first world are soft, because when they go to university, it was paid for by someone, and then they kind of got their job. And if they failed, they kind of got the dole. And, there's all these safety mechanisms. I tend to joke, and whether you're black or white in Africa is fairly irrelevant, because, some could say it's harder, some could say it's easier. It's irrelevant. There is no plan B. You either survive or you die. It's like that simple. Like, and I'm not being, unfortunately, I'm not being facetious even. Literally people starve and die. So, you learn pretty quickly to get shit done and to make a plan. And then you take on kind of the establishment. And I think, maybe that's like a born disruptor entrepreneurial trait, where, one of the things I teach my son is that rules are for other people. And people go, no, but rules are important. And I go, okay, great. Well, I wrote a poem in 2015, why follow the rule? The rule said the world was flat. They said we couldn't go to the moon. They said that women couldn't vote. They said Africans couldn't vote. Don't necessarily trust the people that make the rules. Follow the laws of nature and you'll find your destiny. And it's interesting because everyone always goes, but those are the rules. And I challenge anyone on this call, go and ask someone that says those are the rules. Ask them why. And I literally start responses, but those are the rules. And people don't actually use their brains to go, well, why is that a rule? It's a stupid rule, okay? And so as a disruptor, when I look at it, I look at the problem, okay? And so I look at the financial industry and I say the system is broken. You are the regulators there to protect the investor, but are they really? 2008, middle-class America lost billions and billions and billions, in fact, trillions of dollars, okay? And who got bailed out? The banks. Okay, no one went to jail. Okay. And in South Africa, there's crisis after crisis. No one ever goes to jail. But yet they try and stop like a fintech startup from doing crowdfunding because they're protecting the investor. And it's like, it makes no logical sense. So, for me, and please, I'm not saying that you shouldn't abide by regulation. I mean, we literally formed the African Crowdfunding Association so that we could work with the regulator. But if something's broken, it doesn't mean you should accept the status quo. And unfortunately, you've got to take the hard path. Now, I want to share a little story with you, if you don't mind. But there's a guy called Ray Dalio. And if you haven't watched a book or listened to a book called Principles by Ray Dalio, it's one of my top 5 books I've ever read. Highly, highly, highly recommended. And I'm re-listening to it again at the moment, and because it was such a profound book for me. And he talks of a story. It was 1982, and he was bankrupt. He had gone against the status quo and lost. And he had gone bankrupt, and he was literally had to get rid of all his employees, and it was just him. And he could go back to get his corporate job. And he told a story which really resonated with me. He says every single human being has a choice. They can sit on the one side of a valley, and it's the side of mediocrity, and they can have they can be safe. They can live in a safe house, and their kids can go to a safe school, and they can earn a safe income, and they can have a safe pension, and they can live in the world of mediocrity. Or they can go into the jungle, and the jungle's in front of them. And this jungle's dangerous. I mean, you're going to get hurt. You probably could die, but there's a chance of getting to the other side. And the other side is in a magnificent life, one of fulfillment, one of purpose, one of success that most people only dream of. How many people are prepared to take the step into the jungle? And it's a very long answer to your short question, Carmen, but my challenge to everyone on this call, and probably they're already doing it, is that I decided at a very young age to step in the jungle. I didn't care what people told me and said that's the status quo. I was like, that's rubbish. I'm going to live to that other side of the jungle where it's about fulfillment and purpose and living a magnificent life. And I've had the privilege of meeting, I've spent 2 weeks with Richard Branson on Necker Island, just as an example. I've had the privilege of meeting incredible people. And one of the things that we taught is that, if you have lots of money, then you're going to be divorced. Or, if you're a very successful business person, then your kids are going to be heroin addicts. And it's absolute rubbish, because I've had the privilege of meeting highly successful people that quite frankly have it all, like Richard Branson and many others. And that when you meet them, you realize, well, it is possible to get to the other side of the jungle, and the world can be bloody amazing. And once you've experienced that, then even if you're down in the jungle and it's really, really hard, going back to mediocrity is just not even an option.
So you've given us a slight taste of what's on the other side of the jungle, or maybe even the journey through the jungle is pretty amazing. There's some fulfilling stuff, there's growth, there's successes, but there's some hair-raising dangers in that jungle too. What would you say, if you could just scan your memory, or it's probably going to come to you immediately, is what does it take to maneuver through that jungle? What are the top things an entrepreneur needs to have to actually navigate that jungle? What have you found those things are?
It's such a difficult question to answer, because first, you need to be prepared to risk it all. Like, I thought you were going to ask me something along the lines of, what's been one of your worst hardships? And what I was thinking before I'd even heard your question was, losing my best friend. One of the first businesses we started, me and my best friend joined me, and we didn't, like when you get married, we didn't agree how it was going to work or how we'd get divorced, and it ended up being a shit show, and I lost my best friend of it. I'm not proud of that. So unfortunately, you need to realize, like, you're going in this jungle and you're going to get hurt. You're going to get emotionally hurt. You're going to get financially hurt. The more successful you get, the more people are going to tell you. I mean, imagine if you're Elon Musk, how many people, say that he's an absolute idiot and this and that. I mean, you've got to have a pretty hard rhino skin to kind of deal with all of that. So you've really got to have that self-belief, and you've got to accept that you are going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt badly. And you've got to keep going. The second thing, which is interesting, is I'm doing a course at the moment, which I'm finding amazing, with Stephen Kotler. And Stephen Kotler is the guy that wrote the book Bold. He's written the book The Rise of Superman, which is all around flow. A very amazing gentleman. And he said you've got 3 intrinsic motivators. So most of us are chasing external motivators: money, fame, power, living, in the eyes of mommy or daddy or your husband or wife or whatever it is. Okay. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. Andre Agassi and Tiger Woods are classic examples. Lots of money, lots of fame, but they weren't fulfilled and they blew up. And he said the three intrinsic motivators you got to be clear on is your purpose. So the number one thing, why are you doing this? Simon Sinek talks about the why. You have to be clear on your why. And as Steve Jobs says, no matter how hard it gets, if you're clear on your why, you keep going. The second thing is you have to have autonomy. I didn't have to ask anyone to be on this call, Carmen. You asked me, do I want to be on this call? I said, yes, I'd love to share. That's autonomy. I'm in control of my life. I choose to do what I do. And that's why things like COVID drive me crazy, because I'm not allowed to do things and it irritates me. And the third thing is mastery. And, like you doing this whole episode and you learning a whole new skill, you're mastering something you love. And if you have purpose and you have autonomy and you're working towards mastery, then you're going to have the intrinsic motivators to keep going through the jungle. If you don't have those three, you'll give up in the jungle.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you how you get those three, because we'll have to be here for a week or more. So it's awesome though, just to have the highlights.
Do Stephen Kotler's course. It's brilliant.
There you go.
Yeah.
What's that course called?
Hang on, I'll get it for you just quickly. So the guy's name is Stephen Kotler, and the course is The Habit of Ferocity, and it's on Mindvalley. Just Google The Habit of Ferocity Mindvalley, and it'll come up.
Fantastic. So now we know what the three things are, and we know where to go and find it. Amazing. Awareness should be on that list as well, because if you have awareness, it shortcuts the process.
Well, Scott, it's so interesting you say that, because something I learned from Tony Robbins years ago is that don't go and try and figure it out yourself. Like, no matter what you've done before, someone else has done it before. So when you say awareness, like, I agree with you 100%. Not only be aware, but go and find someone who's already done it and copy it.
Exactly. There's always a way, and then the jungle will be easier. It will be a whole lot more fun. Let's talk about this financial services industry. I've also been in financial services. Although I'm not a coach specific in financial services, somehow I navigate and I end up in financial services over and over again. So the last 2 decades, I've got a feel for what this industry is about. So many people are disillusioned, Scott. What's going on for people to feel so disillusioned with this industry?
Well, look, let's start off, okay? And it's so interesting you asked the question, because we had such a momentous occasion around the world. And I'm just actually pulling up the article here where, I don't know if you're aware last week of what's been happening with Reddit and with GameStop and Robinhood and everything else. Are you aware of what's happening?
No. Fill me in.
So I'm going to put a little link in the chat box here, which you can drop in below the video for everyone.
Okay.
So GameStop is a company that basically sells video games in America. So think of it like Blockbuster. We used to go and hire a DVD, and then you go home and you put it in your machine, and then you had to take it back to Blockbuster, and something like Netflix came along and just put them out of business. Well, GameStop's the same. Like, you actually go in a physical store and you rent a video game and you come home and you play it. And they're not doing very well, okay? So this big hedge fund, private equity hedge fund, basically did what's called a short on this company. So they bet against the company failing. And all the people on Reddit, now Reddit's this massive community around the world of people that talk to each other. 6 million of them, to put in perspective, said, no, we're tired of the financial industry. We're tired. In 2020, we all lost our jobs. Middle income, world, like, basically fell over. And the banking industry and the private equity industry made more money last year than they've made in the last 5 years. They're tired of it. So what they did is they went on Reddit and they said, right, go and buy the stock. So on last Friday, all these people bought the stock, and the stock went from $50 to $500.
Wow.
And it closed on last Friday. Now, Robinhood is a online investment platform, and the whole ethos of it is that they rob from the rich, the hedge funds, to allow the little man, you and me, the retail investor, to invest, okay? But when the shit was going down, Robinhood suddenly switched off all trades. So the little man couldn't buy anymore, okay? So now they were about to IPO, and now literally, like, they had 100,000 negative reviews on Google, and their ranking went from like 4 or 5 on Google to 1. Now, why is this all so important, Carmen? Because your very question, people are completely disillusioned with this industry. It's broken. The only people who make money are the bankers and the call it the private equity people. You and I don't have access to the products that they even invest in. And people have had enough now. And to be honest, they've got a voice now, using, collaborative investing and social media and everything else. And so the world's changing very fast, actually. And what's interesting, that private equity firm, and I forget the name of it now, lost billions and billions of dollars on Friday because their short didn't work because the stock rose. And the people didn't even buy the stock because they wanted to make money out of the stock. They just wanted to, screw the hedge fund. And this isn't interesting, okay? So when you take, now that's just happened in literally the last week, okay? But you take the long-term trends. There's a lady who's a good friend of mine that I'm not going to mention the name of the company or the lady, but she worked for one of the most recognized investment banks in the world. She resigned 6 months ago. She's disillusioned. She's like, this is an absolute internal travesty of how we make money, basically how we screw the clients publicly. Privately, we don't tell them publicly, So the whole game is engineered against you winning. And if I'm wrong, why, coming back to how we started today, 99% of people fail. Okay, if I'm wrong, then why over 100 years have 99% of people failed? It's rubbish, okay? So where people are completely disillusioned is they don't have access, they don't have knowledge. We're not taught this stuff in school. Is that a conspiracy theory or not? It's ridiculous. Why are we not taught business, money, sales, whatever in school? It makes no sense unless there's a conspiracy theory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, really, I think the people in the industry are disillusioned. I think the investors are disillusioned. And that's what technology is changing. Things like cryptocurrency, things like social media, things like e-commerce are all coming together. And they're cutting out the middleman, they're cutting the costs, but what they're radically doing is disrupting the status quo, because 50 million people that put in $1 is suddenly $50 million. Those 50 million people were relevant. No one cared about them because $1, in the financial industry, you wouldn't want to go if you were a financial, what are they called, planner, you wouldn't want to go and help someone with $1. It's not worth it. Your time is only worth, the hour you deal with that person. But now suddenly 50 million people using technology are more important than a couple of investors. And that's how the world's changing. And I think it's incredibly exciting because, again, you and I couldn't invest in deals previously that you needed $2 to $20 million to get access to and I'm sorry to say, it's also an old boys club, which is, terrible in itself. And you and I weren't even invited, even if we had the money. Now we are being invited because when we all come together and collaboratively invest, and it's quite interesting, the concept of collaborative investment, because it's been around for centuries, and the kings and queens it started with the monarchs using collaborative investing. And the only reason we've chucked the word smart in is because you have a smart TV, you've got a smart watch. Why can't you collaboratively smart invest? It's taken the concept of the kings and queens, and I believe with technology, each and every one of us now has access.
So this is the upside also of our COVID situation last year. So it disrupted so much and it brought digital right square into our lives, where everybody has to be digital, whether they like it or not. And you've got such an awareness and an acceptance of these digital platforms. So give us an idea, firstly, of the societal changes happening. If you want to touch on COVID, that's cool, but that's specifically impacting the wealth landscape. And then I want to hear from you about this Wealth 5 and the future. Give us a take on that.
Well, it's interesting because, people don't like to change. So it's really interesting. You've kind of got what's always called the early adopters. So I tend to joke with people, here's my cell phone. And in 1999, I got my first cell phone. It was my first year out of university. And my mother was like, it's extravagant. That's what my mom told me. It's extravagant. And, nowadays, not a single person pretty much has a cell phone. If they didn't, they wouldn't be able to literally connect with the world. So what tends to happen is that people move 4 times more away from pain than they do towards pleasure. So when I bought a cell phone in 99, I bought it for pleasure. Okay. But people weren't buying cell phones because they had no pain. What COVID did is it accelerated the pain curve. So the digital adoption took place, not because of pleasure, but because of pain. So as an example, we've been on Zoom and previously on Zoom, it was GoToMeeting. And before GoToMeeting, we were on Skype from 2004. Okay. And why were we on that? Well, the pain. I couldn't afford to pay BT and all the telephone calls, and we had people around the world. So, we've been literally digital for 17 years. Most people weren't. All my friends, particularly my corporate friends, not a single one of them were digital. Like they didn't even know what Zoom was. I mean, we've been on Zoom for 5 years, but now they had the pain. They had to adopt. Okay, and it's the same working from home and everything else. So how does that impact the wealth space? Well, the exact same thing. You know, my mom, as an example, didn't want to do e-commerce. In fact, she was absolutely convinced that they would rob her of all her money. Now suddenly she had COVID and she was stuck at home and she had to do e-commerce. We haven't got into the online investing space yet. The online investing space is still the early adopters. It's still the people like me that like to buy cell phones early. The pain hasn't come yet, but the pain is coming because the stock markets are in bubble territory. They're about to fall apart. Not my opinion. Go and look at what Ray Dalio, has to say on it. The governments around the world are pumping money into currencies, so the fiat is dropping. And so the pain is actually growing, okay? And as that pain grows, people will be forced more and more to take action. And that's where the online investment space, it's just an obvious thing. We did online publishing and sending emails, and then we kind of did social media, and then we did e-commerce. And now what's happening is social media and e-commerce are coming together. Now we're doing social commerce. It's the fourth step. It's why they talk about, the internet 4.0. Now you asked about 5.0. And this is where I get really excited, and you can see the big smile on her face. Now, this is a concept that came out from the Japanese, actually. And Society 5.0, and I highly recommend people go and Google it. But it's all about us moving from the digital age to the collaborative age. And it's all about sustainability and working together. It's not about, in 4.0, it was kind of Donald Trump mentality, which is like, I win, you lose. I build an investment bank and make billions, and screw you, and great for me and bad for you, and tough. Whereas 5.0 is all about sustainability and how do we do it together, and 1 + 1 equaling 3. And so there's a concept that the Japanese created called Society 5.0. Roger Hamilton, who's another person I highly recommend, went on to create Entrepreneur 5.0 and what that looks like. And I really enjoyed that. So we then took that concept and we created Wealth 5.0, and we also created Property 5.0. And if I share with you, Jan, I'm happy to quickly just share my screen with you as to what 5.0 is all about. Because really this is something that I've been showing people since 2018. And now we've suddenly had COVID, and now it's suddenly a hell of a lot more obvious. Hang on, that's not sharing the right screen. Let me just try again. That's the right screen. So what is Wealth 5.0? Well, it's all about your impact to start off with. Remember, we just spoke about your why and your purpose. What impact are you having on the planet? More and more people, particularly the millennials, they don't want to just invest, and the Gen Zs, they don't want to just invest. They want to know they're having a meaningful contribution on the planet. So like if they can invest in a building and earn a 10% return, but maybe 9% goes in their pocket and 1% goes to feeding children in Africa, that's good for them. Like it's not all about profit, at all costs. It's profit and purpose married together. And the SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals that were set by the UN, and it's the 2030 goals. Point 2 is about your creativity. So I teach my son, most people are taught, if you want to buy a bicycle, your parents will say, what do you think, money grows on trees? Well, actually it does grow on trees because money's made of paper and therefore it does grow on trees. But what I try to teach my son is it actually about value. So I say to my son, if you want the bicycle, figure out how you can create more value. Now, we're in a creative society. We've got artificial intelligence, we've got big data, we've got technology. That's a given, but they're not creative. Humans are creative. The more creative you are and the more value you can create for your fellow human beings, the more money you're going to make. Okay. And that's, I don't like the word money, but wealth. But that's about high touch. We're doing this common live and recorded, but we're two humans. We're talking, we're sharing, we're acknowledging, we're FAQing, we're on social media. So it's not only about tech. It's how do we collaborate as humans, and it's about collaborative smart investing. It's how do we reach in a personalized way more people. Okay. Then the fourth one is high tech. How do we use AI and big data and virtual reality and crypto and blockchain, etc., all the exponential technologies. But I want to be very clear here. It's not either or, it's and both. Okay. Look at Amazon. They've got incredible technology, but they've also got human touch. If there's something wrong, they can help you. You get personalized service. You don't just get the Amazon box, you get personalized. And then the last one is digital, and it's about problem solving. I learned this from Richard Branson years and years ago. The easiest way to be an entrepreneur is to solve a problem. And it's about future proofing. So how do we change the world? We change it one person at a time. How do we solve people's problems? Well, we make their lives better over the future. And that's about the digital landscape and bringing it together. So we tend to say to people in Wealth 5.0, you've got to have a balance of all five of these constructs. And not only will that help you grow your personal wealth, but then you'll be growing the overall collaborative wealth of the planet. And I'm a very big believer. I've always loved the concept of Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar said, you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. Now, that really has been the underlying philosophy of our business. Don't get me wrong. I'm not Mother Teresa. I want to be very clear here. I am not Mother Teresa. I want to empower 1 billion people, and I expect to build $1 billion business in the process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But we don't sit in our company going, how do we become $1 billion company? We sit in our company going, how do we empower 1 billion people? Because the second part of that for me is a foregone conclusion.
And that's goes with your premise. You're only worth the value you create, which is such a shift. I mean, I think this is about my 40th podcast interview now. And without a shadow of a doubt, the thread through every single one of those shows has been create value first, and the value will be reciprocated. So there is a massive shift. And that is actually one of the questions. Why is purpose as important as profit? So maybe you've touched on it now, but maybe give it to us a little bit more in terms of your thinking around that.
Well, I was lucky. Like I kind of just intuitively, this was something that just made sense to me. But if you go and do all the research, and I've told you already at a personal level in terms of intrinsic motivators, but actually there's a thing called an EXO, which is an exponential organization. And there's a great book called EXO. It's, I've just bloody forgotten the name of it, Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail. Now, the number one thing, there's 11 constructs, but the number one thing is, do they have an MTP, a massive transformative purpose? Ours is to help solve the wealth gap. That's it. Okay. Now, what's really interesting, Carmen, is that, people resonate with the purpose. Your investors resonate with the purpose. I had $1 million invested in our company last week. So anyone tells me that we're in COVID and there's no money, that wasn't in a deal. That was as a shareholder in the company. Why? Because they resonate not only with the big picture business idea, but also with the purpose. You end up hiring incredible people because they can go and get a much better job at IBM or Accenture or Deloitte's or one of the big banks, but they're not fulfilling their purpose. They're not being fulfilled. And so to be part of a team where you're not only making your money for yourself, but you're actually fulfilling on purpose, it's massive. So what's really interesting is if you look at it at a personal level, it's a no-brainer. If you look at it at building a team, it's a no-brainer. If you look at it at an investment level, it's a no-brainer. And years ago, Richard Branson wrote a book, and he said, doing good in business is no longer just nice; it's good for business.
Yes.
And I think what's happened in the last 10 years, impact investing has gone from like this little play thing on the side to actually like a major trend in, they call them the SDGs and everything else. It's like a major trend. And even the biggest investment company in the world, BlackRock, has now said that if you're not sustainable and not complying with SDGs, which are sustainable development goals, and there's a whole bunch of things around them, they won't even invest in you. So it's actually turned from a nice to have to now a necessity. And I think that's what we've seen in the last decade. And by the way, I think it's going to accelerate. So to come back to your question, I don't believe you can build a business anymore that's not purposeful from the ground up.
I totally agree with you. And it's what's amazing to see is there's a mass consciousness that's shifting. And maybe not everybody's acting on it yet, but there is a sort of a bubbling awareness that these important principles need to come to the fore and business needs to shift. And our mindset around the world needs to shift. And it's up to us as business leaders to start implementing this in our businesses.
Well, I mean, this coming back to it, this article here is the one I shared with you. This is what it's all about. Yeah. I mean, it's literally the retail investors have had enough, and they are literally coming together now, and they're taking a stand. And I mean, they're taking down the hedge. I mean, they're taking down Wall Street, basically. I mean, they've literally, that Wall Street, what was that campaign, Occupy Wall Street, that was in the physical realm, but they've actually realized they got more power in the digital realm.
Wow, we're in interesting times. So let's bring it back to your particular business and how you are creating the shift, even at the forefront of these shifts. So there's a beautiful difference between seeing yourself as a bricklayer versus being a cathedral builder. And I see you as that cathedral builder, and you see yourself, and then you've placed yourself there. And what you're doing, to my mind, is you've given everyone on the planet a chance to own a part of that cathedral. But there's a lot of shift that needs to happen, a lot of disruption, a lot of things that need to change to make that possible, to give people this opportunity. Share with us how you're making this possible through your ecosystem. What is it that you're doing and changing to break down these barriers and to bridge the wealth gap?
I believe there's 6 steps to be successful. Now, whether you earn $1 a day or $1 million a day, I still believe there's 6 steps. The first step is self-belief. Like, literally you have to believe it's possible. And if you don't believe it's possible, then everything else I tell you is a waste of time. So we have to start with self-belief, basically. The second is knowledge. We can sit here and you and I can wax lyrical about IRRs and cash on cash and waterfalls and hurdles. And, the financial industry is famous for talking in acronyms so that people feel stupid and then they don't trust themselves. So they go to a financial advisor who they charge lots of fees to pretty much tell them pretty obvious stuff. So people need the knowledge. And, Warren Buffett says the greatest investment you can make is in yourself. So the knowledge is really important. The third one is accessibility. So, again, in the past, to buy a house, no matter where you were in the world, you had to put down 10 or 20%. That was a lot of money. Most people didn't have 10 or 20%. And, I don't know if people know this, but 49% of the world's wealth is held in real estate. And yet only 12.9% of the world's population has access to real estate. So, and when I say access, again, I want to acknowledge that everyone on this call probably has access to own a house. But then my next challenge would be, well, do you own a medical building? Nice. Okay, or do you own industrial distribution logistics site? And I virtually guarantee you the answer is no. And therefore don't when I talk access, don't consider that you've got access, because middle class people buy houses. I'm sorry, I'm being frank. Middle class people buy houses. The top 1% invest in different types of assets. The fourth one is that you need a system. So whether it's your system and you run it off your own spreadsheet, or you buy someone else's system, or you use an online system, but you need a system. Like if you're going to fly an airplane from Sydney to London and you don't have a system, like there's no way that you're going to make it there, like because you're going to consistently go off track, and like you need a system to see if you're on track or off track. The fifth one is you need accountability. If you've ever tried to lose weight, or you try to go to gym or anything, there's actually some stats that came out last year, which I found fascinating. If you try and do something on your own, you've got a less than 50% chance of succeeding. Okay. If you do it with a partner, like your husband, wife, friend, whatever, you got about a 60% chance of succeeding. If you do it with a mastermind, so that's like-minded people, you got a higher than 70% chance of succeeding. And if you do it with a coach, it can be as high as like 80 or 90%. Which is why all the most successful businesses, people, and teams have coaches. Like it's a no-brainer, okay? But yet I ask how many people on this call actually have their own accountability partner and or coach. And so I believe people need that. And then the sixth step is wealth and freedom. And that might be different. Some people, $1,000 a month passive income might be freedom, and for some it might be $100,000 a month. And for some it might be $1 million a month. Everyone's got different numbers, but ultimately what is wealth to me? It's freedom. It's freedom of choice. It's not money. It's your relationships. It's who you are. It's freedom of choice. So to come back to your question, Carmen, with those 6 steps, we've then built an ecosystem around supporting those 6 steps. So at the education level, we've got the Wealth University. Now, that's all around the inspiration and the knowledge, because you can't change the world without inspiring people, changing the self-belief, giving them the ability that it's even possible, and giving them the knowledge. At the accessibility part, at the moment, we've got 2 different levels. We've got Wealth Migrate, which is, I tend to joke, if you're flying on an airplane, that's business class. Okay, that's the $1,000 investor to the $100,000 investor, okay? And then we've got Private Wealth Global, that's first class. That's the $100,000 plus investor. And you're all on the same airplane, but it's a different level of language, servicing. It's kind of banking versus private banking, you know, that sort of stuff. My dream and my passion is ultimately to launch Wealth Create, which will be $0 to $1,000. You know, it'll literally be helping people, you know, invest through gamification and whatever. We're not there yet. I want to be clear. We're probably 2 years away from that. But that's the overall kind of the ecosystem around the accessibility. And then, you know, the accessibility and the system. And then around the accountability, that's where we've got a thing called the inner circle, where ultimately we're building these tribes of people, because, you know, you and I can hold each other accountable. That's great, but we know each other, we're friends. But what's actually more powerful is if you're in a mastermind of people where you don't even know the people, but they're like a group of people that you can collaborate and hold each other accountable. It's amazing how powerful that actually is. Then ultimately, I think we'll continue to get people their wealth and their freedom. So that's the overall picture. There's one piece of that puzzle that I didn't mention, and that's the wealth movement. And really, what is the wealth movement? Well, that I tend to say it's like the TED Talks for wealth. You know, we have live events, obviously pre-COVID, where you've got like-minded people wanting to get together and really just talk about the challenges of the world and wealth and how we solve them, and learn and grow and be inspired. And then obviously we take that content and we put it online. But really the whole purpose behind the wealth movement is to create a better and more sustainable planet for all. So I tend to say the metaphor I give people is it's like a hot air balloon. Everything I discussed other than the wealth movement is like the basket, and the wealth movement's like the hot air balloon that pulls it all up.
So Scott, I want to just hone in a little bit for the sake of those watching and listening, just to give an idea of what's already accessible. You spoke about, you might have access to a house, but do you own a medical building? Now, your structure literally allows people to own a piece of a medical building. Please explain a little bit of that to us.
So let me do it, because I think seeing is believing. So let's go in here, and I'll literally go to the platform, and I'll go to sign in. And I mean, you can literally see me doing this live. So I'm now in the platform, and I can go in, and right now I can invest in a development deal in Cape Town, and I can earn an 18% return, and it's a 1-year investment. I can go and invest in a senior living in America. I can invest from $5,000. It's a 16.7% IRR, which is an annual return, and a cash on cash return, a lower cash on cash return. So sometimes you've got a higher kind of capital growth, and sometimes you've got a higher cash on cash. You know, this year was a medical deal. It's now funded. We've got another medical deal launching next week. So next week, where you can invest, and they tend to be higher cash on cash returns. I'm just going to go through some of the deals we've had. You know, this was a London opportunity where we weren't buying a house, we were buying the whole building. So you've got 3 different income streams. This was another construction debt financing one. This was a care home in the UK. So I think basically, you know, Carmen, what I'm basically saying is that I can go in and like if I click on this one here, and I'm just choosing any deal, I can go in, I can put in all my different structures. So exactly the same as your internet banking, where you can have different structures. I can go into my wallet. I can see what's in my wallet. I can do any of my different currencies to see what my global, you know, kind of global portfolio is. And then, you know, I can go and read all about the deal. I can see all the pictures. I can see all the financials. I can go read about the market summary. I'm not going to go into all the detail today. I'm not trying to do a sales pitch. I can go and download and read everything. I can read all the risks. I can see the returns, and I can run calculators. I'd like to think got everything at my fingertips to make a decision. If I go and now make a decision, I can literally, on the assumption I've funded my wallet, I can now go and invest in this deal. And let's say that this deal's minimum investment is $10,000. I literally go in here and I can put in $10,000. Now, the different deals differ. And as I said to you, sometimes they're as low as $1,000. You can see all the fees. So again, why are we disillusioned with the financial industry? We're tired of all the fees being hidden. You can see exactly what they are. I can literally go in. I can say I've got the sufficient knowledge. Obviously, I read everything. I can go and read the subscription agreement, but by ticking all the boxes, it automatically signs it. And I literally go agree, and I go make investment. And in the space of less than 2 minutes, you've watched me invest in America. literally live. You can now go into my platform and you can see what's in my portfolio. You can see my wallets, my investments. You can see my pending investments. So this is a structured note, which again is a very sophisticated instrument that no one used to get access to. And it's actually paying we've got one coming out recently that's going to be as high as 17%. It's unbelievable. I'm going to be paid 3 or 4% a quarter. You can see that my McFarlane deal is now sitting there and it'll go live, and you can see all my funded kind of investments, etc. So as an investor, I've got access to everything. I can go to my wallets. I can see all my different transactions, all my dividends. So I don't have to go and set up offshore structures. I don't have to set up bank accounts, or I can go and learn. And all I'm trying to show here is that, back to your question, whether it's a residential building in London, whether it's a medical building in America, whether it's an industrial logistics center in Europe, whether it's a aged care in Australia, whether it's a debt deal in South Africa or structured note, you don't have to pick or choose anymore. And one of the things that I find fascinating is that, if I've got $100,000, I don't put all $100,000 in one deal. I put it in 10 deals because I've now got diversification across countries, assets, currencies, partners. And that's a no-brainer, because if 9 of them work and one doesn't, well, I've got 9 things working. So to come back to your question, and it's a simple question, what we do is help people, or we give people the tools to build sophisticated, diversified portfolios themselves that previously they couldn't do because they didn't have enough money. They didn't want to go and set up offshore structures. They didn't want to set up offshore bank accounts. They didn't want all the hassle. And, I had 16 residential houses myself. I've sold all of them, every single one, because quite frankly, they're just a hassle. And the returns are fairly crap as well. And all of it is now on the platform. Now, the only thing that's interesting is that when I show you my portfolio, you might say, okay, well, Scott's only got a couple of deals. Just be careful with that. Remember, I've got different structures. So different structures have different deals in them. And sometimes I invest in my personal name. Sometimes I invest offshore in structures. But you don't have to have offshore structures. You can do it all in your own name if you want to. Please, whatever you do, you don't get analysis paralysis. So again, all I say to people is get started. And I did tell you a little bit about it, Carmen, but something I'm quite passionate about is we have a thing called the starter pack, and people can get started from $100. And our whole logic is we don't want money to be a barrier to entry. I can talk all day long about the possibility of investing, but once you've actually done it and start owning a first world asset and earning a first world income, whether you invest $100 or $1 million, you get the same return. And there's nothing better than experiencing it yourself.
I really hope, Scott, that and I'll have all the links in the show notes. But it's actually mind-blowing. What you've just shown us is actually mind-blowing. I mean, you can do in minutes what would take you maybe even a year. If you're an investor in one country trying to invest in another country, the barriers to entry are multiple barriers to entry. And you've literally just barraged through all of those. I mean, you've just flipping. It's like a domino effect. You've just gone through all of those and bringing this very sophisticated opportunities to investors. And I really hope people can actually see the value of what you've brought. And it's exciting. It's really exciting to bring this to everybody.
What's also important, though, Carmen, is the power of the crowd.
Yeah.
So if you and I just showed you with $10,000. If I went along to McFarlane, which, by the way, is a massive company in America with a massive track record. I mean, they're doing a $100 million raise right now, to put in perspective. So if you and I turned up and we said, hey, McFarlane, we've got $10,000. We'd love to come invest with you. They're literally going to laugh you. They can just laugh you out the room. Okay. But if you get 1,000 people with $10,000, now that suddenly gets their attention. That's what we've built. That's what collaborative smart investing is. So we have the power of the institutions. And that's what we've always been wanting to do, is that if we can amalgamate the money and come together as an institution, then we get treated as an institution and we cut out all the middlemen. That's why we get much higher returns. If we try and invest with $10,000, well, there's nothing we can do. And then we go back to being a retail investor and we go through the traditional financial industry. And quite frankly, we get screwed by fees. And that's why none of us ever make any money.
Amazing. It's really an amazing platform, and well done to you and your team for putting in what you needed to do to get to this point. So maybe you can give us an idea, because it's always easy to look at what someone's built. When you present that to us in a few minutes, it looks, oh wow, but that didn't come overnight. There's some hairy stuff that goes into creating something like this. I'd like to get a little bit of an idea or glimpse of how you operate in challenge. So maybe you could just share some of the one really tough experience in building this and how you overcame it.
The first thing I'd say, and it's something I learned from Tony Robbins around leadership, is that true leaders focus 99% of their time on the solution and 4% of their time on the problem, whereas the rest of the world focus 96% of their time on the problem and very little on the solution. So whenever I get in a tough situation, not only for myself, but for the team, I keep trying to refocus them back to what's the outcome? What are we trying to achieve here? And let's put all our energy into that, not what the problem is. Yeah, it's interesting, Carmen, when you say, one big challenge. There's been so many, it's hard to like have one stand out. I think probably the overall challenge that we've had is that we've, coming from Africa, we've always wanted to have a global solution. We didn't want to be the English platform or the American platform or the Australian platform or the European platform. We wanted to be the global solution because I believe as an investor, I want to be diversified and invest everywhere, and I want to have it all in one place. We didn't tick any boxes though. At a compliance level, we didn't tick a box. We didn't tick a regulatory box. We don't fit in anyone's boxes. And that's been a massive, massive challenge. And for 10 years, you're consistently told what you can't do. And I think it's just been one of these things where, we've just had to consistently, they say if you want to eat an elephant, chunk it down. And we just had to consistently solve one problem after the next. So, we met the lady that's the head of the African Crowdfunding Association about just before Christmas. And she couldn't believe, we were the very first one to get a crowdfunding license in Africa. Now, that took 10 years to put in perspective, 10 years. We managed to link in with Lemonway, which is the largest payment service provider, the whole wallet provider I just showed you. We're the first and only one out of Africa to have done that. But that took 18 months. We're trying to get European regulation as we speak. And again, there's just box after box. So I think to answer your question, if I would belittle any one of the massive challenges, but it's more just a case of keeping your eye on the target. And then lastly, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Elon Musk always says, if you're dealing with a regulator, they're incentivized to say no. Because if they say yes and something goes wrong, they get fired. If they say no, they keep their job. So one of the things you've got to deal with whenever you're dealing with someone is you've got to think, what's the value to them? How can you show them the bigger picture that's adding value to them? So remember, value is not just for your customers, but also for your partners, your suppliers, your regulators, everyone. And so the metaphor, I would say, and how we overcame it and kind of the consistency for me is always the same. It's two things. One is focusing on the solution, and one is focusing on how can we try and persuade them that it's adding value to them. This is not just a pain in the ass. It's like, what's the bigger picture and how are we going to change it for you? Now, sometimes that takes years, which is why you need number one before you can get to number two. It's really just that resilience that you have to have, and then lastly, if there's a third part, you don't do it on your own. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'm very grateful. We've got an incredible team and, people that are far smarter than me and the team. And that's where you solve problems by using the collective intelligence of the team. And then one thing we've done as a company of which you're part of is we've got a collective community. And so now you've not just got a bunch of smart people working in the company, but you've got a global community of people that are equally passionate about purpose and profit, and they're collectively working together. And it's amazing what mountains you can climb when you're all pulling together in the same direction.
Thank you for that, Scott. It's you said at first not sure how you've done so many things, overcome so many barriers, but the way you've summarized it, the solution, be solution focused, value focused, and then the collective intelligence, that's really great, and that's such a theme coming through more and more and more. For us to get through the challenges we're experiencing now, these are the things that we need to focus on. So one last question before we wrap up. You've had extensive experience in community. You did one really clever thing is you didn't try and get into these other territories on your own. You got local partners on the ground. Yet anyone been in business long enough and who's tried to take on partners knows that there's stuff that you have to learn when taking on partners. What have you learned if you could give us a sort of a filter or a gauge or something, how do you pick your partners? How do you do that well, to the best that you can?
I think our three core values are trust, transparency, and alignment. And I'm going to refer to alignment. We learned the hard way. We went into China, we raised $1 million. We basically became glorified venture capitalists in China. We employed a bunch of people. We were like micromanaging Chinese people. We didn't understand the language, the culture, or anything. It was an absolute disaster. I mean, in 2016, 2017. And we did the same in Australia, by the way. And we basically just had a bunch of glorified employees. And then we realized by fluke, well, by necessity more than anything, like we didn't have any more money to put into China. So we were like, look, this has to change. Like we're getting rid of the people that are useless, and you guys are now going to have to go out and get funding for yourself at a localized level. And that just changed the rules of the game. They went from being employees to entrepreneurs and partners, which meant we were aligned. And, there's a great saying that I love to repeat: when people pay, they pay attention. And now whether they paid with their own money or whether they paid with their mates' money, it makes a big difference. So like I joke with people, when I went to China in 2016 with my money, and when I say my money, my investors' money, I'm the one who has to look them in the eyes and shake their hand and make a return, but it's our money. They would take me to the fanciest restaurants. We had fancy offices. Everything was fancy. Now, when it's their money, we go there. We go to the equivalent of McDonald's. So the short answer to your question is whether you're trying to find business partners on the ground or whether you're trying to find a property partner or anything, the big lesson I've learned is about alignment. Are you aligned? Are they going to make a short-term profit up front? Why do we think that financial planners and estate agents work? Think about it. If you and me, Carmen, were getting married and you were marrying for love and I was marrying for money, it's not going to work. If we were business partners and you wanted to build a global business and I wanted to go surfing, it's not going to work. But yet we do business with estate agents and financial planners and other people brokers that earn money up front, and we're trying to make a return for long term. It's never going to work. We're not aligned. So try and make sure that you've got trust and transparency up front. And we use quite a lot of psychometric tests for that. But actually, more importantly, we use our community and referrals. So, someone already knows someone, which is so powerful. And then the alignment part is how you structure the deal so that you all win together, but you also all lose together. And that changes the rules of the game. You'd be surprised how hard it is to find business partners if you're telling them they have to put the money in versus if you've suddenly got lots of money. And it really changed the rules of the game for me, because in the beginning, I thought I had to go out and raise $100 million and build this platform and company all over the world. And then I realized, no, that's completely wrong. I need to fund the global head office, and I need to help the local entrepreneurs with funding because we know how to do that. But they must get the money out of their friends and family. And the best advice I could give is when people pay, they pay attention.
I like that a lot. So given the landscape that we're in, and you're right at the heart of this digital forefront, and you're ahead of the game in terms of that. You've been in it a long time, and you've got the collaborative thing, you've got the community going. So you really are disrupting things because you're ahead of most of these things, and you've been in this game that people are only catching up to for a long time. You've done a lot of things ahead of schedule. What for you is the exciting next thing? What is the dream now that you have for the future?
Venture building. So what I mean by that is, again, working with Roger Hamilton and the whole concept of Society 5.0, Entrepreneur 5.0, Investor 5.0, Wealth 5.0, is that we've built the global infrastructure, we've built the global backbone. Now what excites me is rolling out franchises. So for a better term, call them McDonald's franchises, call them KFC franchises, a business within a box. So you want a Mauritian opportunity? No problem. We come there, we find someone on the ground, we help set them up. They run, Wealth Mauritius. And there's 192 countries to roll that out. There's also genres. There's a sector for women. There's a sector for African Americans. There's a sector for millennials. And what's my job or my team's job is to go and find passionate people, give them a business within a box, set them up for success, and plug them into the ecosystem. How do we empower 1 billion people? Not by having one platform, by having a multitude of localized platforms plugging into a global ecosystem. And I thought that this would be probably ready in 2014, 2015. You know, they call it Elon Musk time, where he thinks the rocket will take off in 3 months and his team think it'll take 3 years. I definitely suffer from that. You know, I thought we'd be ready in 2014, 2015. Unfortunately, we were only ready in 2020. And so really we can now put the foot on the accelerator in 2021, rolling that out. And, you know, you don't roll out 100 KFCs in the first year. You roll out one and you get it right. So we'll be lucky to roll out maybe 2 this year, get them right, and then really step on the gas next year. But that's really what excites me. Not only because we can empower a lot more people, but also we can empower business people who want to step into the digital landscape.
Very exciting. We look forward to seeing this rocket take off. And I have no doubt with that shirt and your attitude and mindset, it will be done.
Well, I just want to acknowledge you as well, because, you know, that concept of the wealth movement, how do we create a better and more sustainable planet for all? It's people like you. It's all the people listening that are, as I understand it, disruptors in their own right. We cannot change the world individually, not a single one of us. We can only do it together. And we're all part of a movement. And I just want to acknowledge you in the movement because, you know, Margaret Mead said, it's never a large group of people that change the world. It's a small group of committed individuals that do. And, you know, I think we're all part of a tribe that sees a better planet. And unfortunately, no one else is going to do it. So we have to create it ourselves. So, you know, thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate you sharing with everyone. And hopefully today we've added some value to the people who've listened.
Most certainly. Thank you. Thank you for that, Scott. And sure, it's so nice. Even though I know you, so much of you and your business, it's just so awesome to get a first-hand glimpse, you know, answering these questions. So thank you for bringing what you have to us. One last question. If you could share a message that's really close to your heart, a deeply meaningful message and a message you wanted to share with the world, what would that be?
Find your purpose and the rest doesn't matter. So literally every single human being needs to understand why they're here, what's their purpose, and then, you know, don't let people get in the way. So don't worry about the how and the what. Focus on the why, and the how and the what will fall in place. It changed my life when I figured out what my purpose was. And you know, being on webinars like this, the challenges you've spoken of, the difficulties. I mean, I don't want to sit here and bore you with all the travesties that I've had to go through. But when you're clear on your purpose, you can keep going in that jungle. Without your purpose, you're lost. And so a message close to my heart is find your purpose, whatever that is, sustainable development, women in education, whatever it is, find it, and then back yourself to live a bigger life than society. You know, don't stay in mediocrity. Step into the jungle.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks for disrupting this industry that needed disrupting. And what you bring in to so many people is really significant. And I really want to acknowledge you and your team for going the mile and bringing it to where it is and where you're still taking it. Thank you so much for that.
We've got a long way to go. So we're far from at the destination.
That's okay. Look where you've come already. And that's really worth celebrating. So thank you for that. And to all of you watching, listening, wherever you are, you don't have to be a disruptor of industry to be a disruptor. You can be a disruptor in your own right. You can be a disruptor of your own thinking, which actually is what is most important for every single one of us as we face the challenges we face currently and going forward. So be bold enough to disrupt your own thinking and give yourself the opportunity to make a massive difference in your own life, in your family, and potentially in your company and community. So go for it, be disruptive, and until next time, lots of love.
That's the one.